If I were to ask you to name an iconic trilogy of games, what would be the first thing to come to mind? Now, depending on what you value in a game, whether it's the story, the gameplay, or even the pain, your answer could range anywhere from Donkey Kong Country to the Ezio collection. Among the greats, however, there are a few that could be considered console defining, and it's because of these very franchises that certain consoles rose to heights that are unmatched even by today's standards. We've already covered one of these franchises on the channel before, as well as a particularly sly thief. This time though, I wanted to delve into a trilogy that I have never personally played, even as a kid. But here's the catch, I didn't want to just play them, I wanted to fully complete them. I mean really, just how hard could these games really be? Ah shit. Fuck this. Man, this shit fucking sucks. Now, as I've done with every other video in this series, I made sure to record and track every single death I experienced while gunning for 100%. Any instance where I failed to complete a mission was also counted as a death, regardless of whether or not Jack met the Grim Reaper. We'll then use these death counts to rank each game from the original trilogy from easiest to hardest. And with that being said, let's warp our way on over to the precursor of this marvelous trilogy. Welcome back to 2001, by which point Naughty Dog had already developed and delivered a trilogy that defined an era. Now, I've avoided mentioning that trilogy by name, but I know you're all thinking of it, and even if you aren't, I'm sure listening to this title screen will give you a pretty good idea. Riddles aside, our adventure begins on a mysterious island, and it's here where we get our first look at our dynamic duo, as they secretly observe a speech given by the game's main antagonists, Gol and Maya. Unfortunately, these two aren't Sly Cooper, as the duo are immediately busted by a lurker. The short altercation to follow ultimately ends with Daxter being turned into an Ottsel, which at one point I considered to be a real animal, but I mean it's not. It's literally a hybrid of an otter and a weasel that's only relevant to this game and nothing else.
Well, duh.
Lukewarm IQ aside, the duo makes their way back to Samos's hut where they get absolutely cooked for 5 minutes straight.
I'm gonna keep yapping, because in my professional opinion, the change is an improvement.
Honestly, we're barely 5 minutes into this game and I was already loving it. We're then sent off to Gaza Rock, which acts as the game's tutorial stage. It's at this point where I want to discuss what exactly is required to achieve 100% in this game, and who better to ask than Jak and Daxter themselves. Okay, well, that's not the best start.
I have no manners, kid.
I feel like this is rather foreshadowing. Anyway, all we really care about is how I'm going to 100% this game. And yeah, it seems Jack's high on something here, but he is somewhat correct. Now you're probably wondering how I'm even talking to him in the first place. And that's all thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Polybuzz. Using this app, you can talk to any waifu you could possibly think of. Or if you're like me, you could use it to ask some of your favorite celebrities some burning questions that you've been wondering for a while.
La verdad es que estoy muy contento en Inter Miami.
Oh, probably should have found the English version. And that's better. With over 20 million characters to talk to and unlimited potential to create your own, there's practically no limit to the amount of creativity offered here. Polybuzz is also completely free to use, but if you did want to test out some of its premium features, then be sure to type in my code LEGEND in the search bar above, which will give you 3 days of premium completely free that you can cancel at any time. Now then, Jack, let me show you just how legendary I truly am. Now, as Jack most definitely said in his messages, to 100% this game, we have to collect 2000 precursor orbs, 101 power cells, and finally 112 scout flies. Gaza Rock does a good job of introducing these collectibles while teaching the player a number of Jack's signature moves. It doesn't teach you all of them though, and as we'll come to see, the few that aren't mentioned here are by far the best in the entire game. The stage also introduces Blue Eco, which not only turns you into a supersonic magnet, but can also be used to activate numerous precursor artifacts. Now surprisingly, there are no enemies present here on Gaza Rock, but it does have a few spike traps, one of which I purposefully fell into so I could seamlessly transition into talking about Jak and Daxter's health system. See, unlike a certain Bandicoot, Jak can tank up to 4 hits of damage, which I thought was rather forgiving at this point in the game, especially when you consider the copious amounts of green eco that are dropped not only from breakable crates, but also by the very enemies looking to decimate you. One thing I will say is that I'm glad Jak can swim. I'm not sure what it is with PlayStation mascots and water, but they've never had a good relationship. After conquering Geyser Rock, we're free to explore the first village hub of the game, Sandover Village. But before that, let's just take a moment to appreciate how good this game fucking looks. I mean, the colors, the draw distance, and just the sheer scope alone forced me to spend a good 10 minutes just taking in the views. Glazing aside, there's a lot more to Sandover Village than its breathtaking sights. It's actually the first location to include one of the main plot devices, the villages. These villages assign us tasks that, if completed, award us with power cells. Now, these tasks can range from simple requests like providing a certain number of precursor orbs, all the way to specific jobs like jumping our way to this massive ass egg where we have to push it off the cliff. As I was exploring Sandover Village, I stumbled across a few rocks that seemed to lead to a mysterious figure. The only problem was that the islands leading to him seemed to be extremely far apart. After that pathetic jump attempt, I stumbled across the first hidden move, the roll jump. This is Jak's rendition of your typical long jump, and using it I had no trouble making my way over to the mysterious figure, who revealed himself to be the Oracle. Unfortunately, he started waffling about how he needed 120 precursor orbs for his power cells, and I'm not sure about you guys, but I was fucking broke at this point. In hopes of changing that, I bolted over to Sentinel Beach, where I crossed paths with our first real sense of danger. Yeah, I take it back. Sentinel Beach introduces numerous enemies. The only problem is that they all die in one hit, which is far from challenging. That being said, the beach also has an arsehole on a cannon who continuously fires bombs at us. Luckily for us though, these bombs take a millennia to explode, which is great for breaking reinforced crates, but not so great at posing any sort of danger to us. Even if you were to lose health by some miracle, one of the first tasks assigned to us by Samos sees us unblocking some eco harvesters in the area. Once unblocked, these harvesters act as green eco vents, which fully restore any health lost. This pretty much eliminates any chance of dying in Sentinel Beach. But as simple as this area is, I wasn't able to collect every power cell or precursor orb on my first trip around, as the blue eco vents had to be unlocked first. To unlock these vents, I needed to make my way over to the Forbidden Jungle, and unlike Sentinel Beach, this place meant business. Essentially everything here ups the ante in terms of difficulty when compared to Sentinel Beach. The obstacles are far more prominent, the waters are now filled with more carnivorous fish, and the enemies, despite dying in one hit still, have more awkward hitboxes and attack patterns. Despite all that though, the hardest challenge so far emerged in the form of a simple minigame. Assigned to us by the fishermen here, the goal of this minigame is to use the analog stick to move our net around as we catch 200 pounds of fish. There's just one catch. Get it?
You suck!
If we catch a single poisonous eel, then it's all over. The sensitivity of the net itself was surprisingly high, which made it extremely easy to overshoot certain lanes and miss a few fish. With the pressure on, I vowed to complete this minigame on my first attempt. Well then, there goes my clean sheet. Not wanting to spend any more time fishing, I quickly dominated the minigame on my second attempt and worked my way up to the Forbidden Temple. This ironically led us to a lift which took us back down into the center of the temple, where I fell for the oldest platformer trick in the book.
Oh no!
Oh, there's no way I fucking fell for that shit. It's at the end of this platforming section where we find the blue eco vent switch. Activating it unlocks every blue eco vent across the world, and it's also here where we face what I'd call the first true boss of the entire game. Now, seeing as he's the first boss, and I use that term loosely, he isn't very hard. He's only got a small handful of attacks, and the method in which you damage him is also fairly easy to understand. Now, as you'd expect, upon defeating him, we're rewarded with a power cell. What isn't so obvious, however, is the fact that he holds 5 precursor orbs in his mouth that we can only grab by jumping on his head 5 times. Now, if it wasn't for my cocky need to teabag a defeated foe, there's no way in hell I'd ever find these orbs, and it was this particular moment that filled me with dread, because I knew this wasn't going to be the only time the game tried to screw me. The rest of my time in the Forbidden Jungle was spent trying to figure out how to realign these beams. It's not hard. I'm just dumb. So that beam's hitting the pole but how do I get there? Like, what do I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. From here, I made my way back to Sandover Village to let the villagers know that I'm him.
Stop the cap!
Now, at this point, there were a few things I could do. I was extremely tempted to shut Kiara up by making my way over to the Fire Canyon, but instead, I wanted to collect that final power cell in Sentinel Beach. Little did I know, the only thing I would be collecting here was a mini heart attack. Now, I'm certain his name isn't but, well, that's what I ended up calling him throughout the game. Jesus Christ, you're fucking everywhere. Thankfully, my run-in with him didn't result in a death, and I was able to collect the final power cell as well as the remaining precursor orbs. Now, despite Kiara's non-stop nagging,
Hurry up with those
oh my
cells.
fucking god, does she say this every time? I once again decided to ignore her and instead hijacked the fisherman's boat as we sailed on over to Misty Island. Now, if you're thinking this place looks familiar, it's because it's the same island that Jak and Daxter first arrived on in the opening cutscene of the game. Now, with that in mind, there was a good chance this area was going to be another step up in terms of difficulty.
No shit.
Joking aside, Misty Island was the first area where the lurkers genuinely posed a threat. Some of these guys came equipped with legendary tier 8 bone armor, which lets them tank an extra hit. This added resistance didn't mean much in one-on-one situations, because our hits still stunlock them. The main problem though, is that the majority of them don't really wander around alone. And if you don't time your attacks, there's a very good chance you'll be clobbered by their massive clubs. Lethal enemies are one thing, but the layout of this area is by far the most challenging we've navigated so far. The added verticality, as well as the copious amounts of instant death gaps, made traversing this area far harder than any previous one. If that wasn't bad enough, old mate here has apparently swum across the whole universe just to get a piece of that ass. No fucking way, what are you doing here, you Between falling into gaps, getting snacked on by a Jaws wannabe, and colliding face first with a rolling log, it's safe to say that I wasn't really having a pleasant time here. Thankfully, I did get a chance to detox and have some fun on this massive cannon, and you know how good my aim is. Alright, that's enough of that. Now, would you guys believe me if I told you that even after 3 hours of playing, I still hadn't mastered double jumping? Wait, what the fuck just happened? See, the problem was, I assumed that pressing the X button twice meant Jak would always do a double jump. And as you can see, that's not exactly the case. And that's because double jumping in Jak and Daxter is all about the timing. If you instantly spam the X button twice in a row, Jak will not double jump, which unfortunately led to quite a few tragic deaths. Regardless, after collecting everything in Misty Island, it was finally time to shut Kiara up as I made my way over to the Fire Canyon. Now, the Fire Canyon isn't its own hub world, and instead acts as a connection point between two hub villages. I purposefully avoided talking about the Zoomer sections in Misty Island because I wanted to mention them here. What I didn't realize at this point was just how important these vehicles were going to be in the grand scheme of this entire franchise. Regardless, the goal of this section is to drive our way through the canyon before our Zoomer overheats. This is easier said than done, as there are plenty of obstacles in our path, as well as the added need to collect every single collectible along the way. Missing even one of them would almost always result in a death, as it meant I had to waste time to go back and get it. All in all though, after a run or two, these sections aren't too threatening. Fire Canyon leads us to a decrepit and rundown settlement known simply as Rock Village. Just like in Sandover Village, I made my way around talking to any poor souls still stuck here in the hopes of helping them out. My adventuring soon led me to Atlantis, and despite my excitement, one look at the terrors waiting inside had me hightailing it back to Rock Village. After having shat myself, I decided to crawl my way over to the Precursor Basin, which had the potential to be either the most challenging or the easiest area so far. Every task in this area is completed while driving the Zoomer, meaning if you're dogshit at handling it, you're gonna struggle quite a bit. For professionals like me though, this was one of the most relaxing locations I'd come across. Ah shit, I've lost the ring, where is it? Oh, come on! Oh fuck. Okay. Maybe it wasn't that easy. Honestly, the majority of the tasks here were fairly simple, and while the area was littered with dark eco boxes, the inclusion of a green eco well essentially counteracted their existence as they only took off 1 point of health. The race was also pretty straightforward, and the lack of any enemies made zooming around the area almost too easy. Or at least, that was the case, until I stumbled across these ring races. I was able to conquer the purple ring race the first time around, but this fucking blue one, took some figuring out, that's for sure. This particular ring race had everything from tight turns to long jumps, and it took me a few attempts to finally get it down and earn that illustrious power cell. With the basin completed, it was time I manned up and faced the lost Precursor City. Now this was by far the most intimidating area yet. I would even go so far as to say that the lost Precursor City introduces the first real difficulty spike in the entire game. From unique lurkers that require specific strategies to defeat, to time-based platforming and intense chase segments, it's no wonder it left such a strong impression on me when I was getting bodied left, right, and left again. At the end of the city, we're forced to climb our way back out as dark eco rises below us. This segment isn't particularly hard, but it did expose an incredibly annoying habit of mine where I would impatiently press the crouch button in order to complete a high jump. The problem was that I always seemed to do this while moving, which meant I dived straight into a roll jump. I did, however, figure out another secret technique which involved adding a spin to the end of a double jump. This delays Jack's fall time, resulting in a substantial increase in distance covered. And while my reaction to finding this technique warrants a fat dislike on the video, wait, what did I just do? Holy shit, I just figured out, is that speedrun tech or something? Well, I'm actually insane. It proved to be a game-changing discovery for me that I used constantly moving forward. With my confidence at an all-time high, I was able to complete the Lost Precursor City before making my way back to Rock Village, where I helped fund a gambling addict's eventual decline into depression. This left us with one last connecting area to explore, the Boggy Swamp. This area introduces us to a new form of eco, which allows us to fire fireballs from our hands. Now, as cool as that sounds, it does have a detrimental effect on the difficulty of the area as a whole, as it essentially nullifies any danger posed by the various enemies present in the swamp. Whether it was swamp rats, lurker toads, or the intimidating swamp bats, none of them could stand up to the barrage of fireballs coming their way. The area also allows us to ride on Flat, who handles far better than Azuma and can also double jump, making any possible gap completely obsolete. The only challenging segment in this entire area was a task given to us by this drunkard, where we had to defend Farthy's snacks as countless swamp rats rushed towards them. The zoomed field of view means you can't see every snack at once, and the sheer number of rats makes for a decently challenging task. Your aim also has to be somewhat accurate, as the auto lock is rather insignificant. With Farthy back, we can finally make our way back to Rock Village and deal with that asshole that's causing a ruckus. This here is Claw, which is ironic as he's never seen using them. The other ironic part of this boss fight is despite Claw being the active threat, the arena is far more unforgiving than he is. Claw has like 3 different attacks, all of which are incredibly simple to avoid. They do speed up each phase, yet remain unthreatening, mainly due to the fact that they only deal 1 point of damage. The lava on the other hand, yeah, that's an instant kill, which I was reminded of over and over again. My inconsistent double jumps really started to bite me in the ass here, and I mean, I don't really have an excuse, do I? I was kind of just playing like shit. This guy really isn't that hard. Anyway, after beating him on my first try, we venture forth into the mountain pass, and just like the Fire Canyon, we'll once again be zooming through it on our zoomer. This time, however, there's an added requirement where we have to catch up to these pedalcopter lurkers. Yes, that's what they're called. Sections like this really do highlight the added difficulty when it comes to going for 100%. Along this path are branching pathways, narrow ridges, and plenty of obstacles. Not only do we have to catch these lurkers, but we have to do so without missing a single crate or scout fly, and this kind of pressure inevitably led to a death or two. At the end of this pass is the last hub world, which just so happens to be in the crater of a volcano. Now, while this area does require more precise platforming, none of it is particularly challenging. The areas which surround this crater though, now those are a different story. The first one I stumbled across was an arachnophobe's worst nightmare, and trust me when I say, these enemies aren't just horrifying to look at. They're stressful as hell to fight as well. The spiders in particular can tank up to 3 hits while spawning their own little spiderlings. And don't even get me started on the need to jump attack them in the first place. These guys are by far the most annoying enemies encountered so far. These struggles continued further on into the cave, with pitch black sections, swarms of spiderlings, and of course, dogshit jumps. Fuck! Man, usually I cope, but I think I'm just shit. Just like in Sentinel Beach, we're not able to collect every precursor orb the first run through, as we once again need to open up a few vents. The switch this time is in the Snowy Mountains, which conveniently are only a short gondola ride from the volcanic crater. I think everyone can agree that ice stages are some of the hardest to conquer, especially in platformers, as the slippery physics attached to them are purposefully included to inhibit the player's natural ability to move. Slippery ice is bad enough on its own, but when you pair it with objects that push you back, you've got a rather lethal combo. Thankfully, the majority of the enemies here die in 1 hit, which if I'm being honest is a godsend because these guys never stop fucking spawning. Apart from those instances though, the tasks here were all relatively easy. I did perish once alongside Flat mainly due to mistiming a jump, but I wouldn't necessarily call this section hard either. The main objective when coming here, however, was to unlock the yellow eco vents across the world. Doing so meant that I could now go back to the spider cave to collect the last few precursor orbs which were stuck inside some reinforced crates. With the miners paid off and each area completed, I boarded the Zoomer one final time and raced across the lava tube, which featured plenty of branching pathways as well as the occasional moving obstacles. I was actually playing with my monitor off for the first time through, so I crashed without realizing, but after turning it on, I was able to make it to the final teleporter. All that was left was to take down Goal and Maya in their own citadel. Now, for whatever reason, Goal and Maya decided to fortify their citadel with the weakest lurkers they could find. I mean, these are the same guys that patrolled Sentinel Beach, for God's sake. What the fuck are they doing guarding Goal's main base of operations? Ranting aside, it's not the lurkers that we have to watch out for. It's my dog shit double jumps. Oh my god, do I have to search up a guide or some shit? Now, all joking aside, in an area where every platform is moving or has some kind of gimmick behind it, mistiming your jumps or just fucking them up in general oftentimes leads to an instant death. My pain continued as I climbed towards the top of the citadel, and while I'd love to let you hear my reactions to these deaths, I can almost guarantee that I'd be demonetized as a result. Oh, just jump, you fucking I did eventually make it to the top, where I not only freed Samos, but also collected every precursor orb. With blood hot enough to cook me goreng, I steeled myself as I faced off against the final boss of the game. Now, I'd be lying if I said I knew what I was doing during this boss fight. In reality, a lot of it was completed through sheer luck. I mean, I dodged the first Dark Eco nuke purely because I wanted to see if this blue eco pad led to somewhere secret. That's the only reason I went and used it. And that was pretty much the whole fight for me. The only attack I struggled with was when he shot out multiple waves of red eco that covered the entire platform. That being said, by this point I hadn't taken any damage, and after a few more fireballs, the robot was on its last legs. Luckily for us, the four sages had been able to combine their powers to create the first instance of light eco. Using it, we're able to destroy the precursor robot once and for all. The game ends with each of the four sages glazing the hell out of us as our attention turns towards an ancient precursor door. Now, by this point in the game, I had collected all 2000 precursor orbs as well as every scout fly. I had also collected 100 power cells, which is apparently all we need to open up the precursor door and peer inside it. And with that, we have officially 100%ed. Wait, what? Yeah, so apparently there are 101 power cells, with the last one being hidden behind a breakable rock in the mountain pass. Please don't ask me how long it took to find this last power cell. Just know that if I find the person responsible for this, I'm gonna At the end of the Precursor Legacy, I had died a total of 28 times, and while a good few of these deaths stemmed from my inability to double jump, there were still a good few instances that I deemed somewhat challenging. For what it's worth, I'd say the game does a good job of progressively increasing the difficulty from start to finish. The same, however, can't be said for its successor.
Fuck me!
For reference, if the difficulty curve of the Precursor Legacy looks something like this, then Jak 2 would without a doubt look something like this. And having completed Jak 2, I can honestly say without a doubt that it was one of the most addictive yet frustrating experiences I've had with any single game in a long time. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Following the events of the Precursor Legacy, the gang is seen activating the Rift Rider, the precursor device hidden behind the final door in the previous game. Before we can even get our bearings though, a large figure emerges from the ring alongside a horde of creatures. Fearing for his life, Daxter quickly activates the Rift Rider, sending the team hurling through the precursor ring, where they end up separated in a mysterious civilization known simply as Haven City. Jak is captured by the Crimson Guard, and for the next 2 years he's injected with Dark Eco in the hopes that he'll become some sort of super soldier to fight the terrifying metalheads. After making us suffer for 2 whole years, Daxter finally decides to make an appearance and rescue us, except he doesn't really do anything. Instead, Jak gets a taste of his new powers as he shreds the cuffs restraining him. This leads straight into the tutorial segment of Jak 2, where our main goal is to escape the fortress. Now, despite the drastic changes to Jak's body over the last 2 years, he somehow manages to maintain his core moveset. And ironically enough, Jak's moveset is one of the only things that didn't undergo a substantial overhaul. I don't think there's another franchise out there that's given me as much whiplash as Jak and Daxter has. The original game was an exuberant collectathon with light-hearted humour. Jak 2 on the other hand took that wholesome feeling and wiped its ass so hard with it that it somehow became dark and gritty. Okay, there was probably a better way of saying that, but you get the idea. one of the biggest changes to Jak 2 can be seen in the very first room. See, up on the ledge here, there's a precursor orb, but strangely, there's only one of them. This, along with Daxter's dialogue, suggests that there are far fewer precursor orbs this time around. Scout flies and power cells also no longer exist in Jak 2, meaning the only things we need to collect to achieve 100% are the 286 precursor orbs as well as the completion of every story mission. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, only 286 precursor orbs? That sounds fucking easy. And I had the exact same thought pattern, especially when you think back to the 2000 we had to collect in the precursor legacy. Safe to say, this game made me eat those words, as it continuously humbled me for 20 hours straight. The precursor orbs in Jak 2 work a bit differently to the ones in the original game. While you do find a hefty amount during the regular story missions, these barely make up a third of the total count. The rest are earned by completing 24 side missions, getting the gold rank on 8 separate races, earning a gold rank for each weapon course, earning a gold score on the jetboard minigame, as well as earning a gold rank in Onin's game. Doesn't exactly sound so easy now, does it? To keep things somewhat organized, I'll first run through the main story missions before discussing the specific challenges of the optional content. Now surprisingly enough, Jak 2 teaches the player how to jump roll and high jump during its tutorial stage, which I'm sure must have shocked quite a few players who played through the entirety of the original without ever having discovered they exist. This tutorial stage also introduces us to the Red Crimson Guards, who act as the base humanoid enemy type throughout the entire game. What's interesting to note, however, is that unlike the majority of the enemies in the Precursor Legacy, these guys require 2 hits to be defeated, which honestly doesn't bode well for the remainder of the game. Thankfully, our attacks seem to stun lock them at least, allowing for easy follow-up hits, but really, this is only beneficial in one-on-one encounters, and as we'll come to see, this game has everything but one-on-one encounters. Dude, what is going on? Why is there so many gods? Following our grand escape from the fortress, we're greeted by a wise old man called Kor, who tells us we're in the glorious city of Haven. Now, considering the fact that we're immediately bum-rushed by a group of Crimson Guards, I'm going to have to call bullshit on that glorious descriptor. That being said, this gave me a chance to test out our new Dark Eco powers, and I've got to say, they're extremely strong in group combat settings. Seeing Jak obliterate this group of guards gave me the confidence to just go around attacking whoever I saw. This sense of power, the feeling that I could take on whoever I wanted, whenever I wanted, it was sublime. I was invincible. For about 2 minutes that is, before I got absolutely shit on by a never-ending stream of Crimson Guards. Ah shit, I just started the game. Yeah. So I learned pretty quickly not to fuck around with the patrolling guards, which as we'll come to see, is easier said than done. One thing I do want to talk about is the city itself. I'm sure I don't even have to name the game which inspired this open-ended hub world. Everything about Haven City screams Liberty City, and while I'm sure it was groundbreaking for the time, I do have a few gripes about certain design choices and how they impact specific mission types. For now though, let's make our way on over to the hideout where we meet with Torn. He tells us to steal the Baron's banner from the top of the ruined tower, which is located outside the city walls in a lovely place called Dead Town. What a name. Now while Haven City acts as the central hub world for Jak 2, the locations beyond the city walls remind me of the areas found in the Precursor Legacy, as they're far smaller in scale, yet they remain open-ended in design. Now despite it being the very first area, I could already tell that Jak 2 wasn't messing around. In this area alone, the player is introduced to swinging poles, time-based platforms that crumble under you, as well as enemies that once again, die in 2 hits. These are elements that were gradually introduced to the player throughout the course of the first game, only to be dumped on us immediately in Jak 2. I mean, you can't even touch the fucking muddy water here without taking damage. Speaking of damage, you may have noticed that we're given 8 bars of health in Jak 2. Now you'd expect this to translate into 8 points of damage, right? But for whatever reason, Naughty Dog ensured that 90% of the damage taken in this game would cost 2 bars of health. It's a wonder why they even changed it in the first place, when it essentially mimics the 4-point system of its predecessor. Regardless, I didn't have too much trouble making my way up to the tower where I claimed the Baron's banner. After returning to the hideout, Torn fills us in on the lack of water in the slums and begs us to find the valve at the pumping station. Considering with the main protagonist, we have no choice but to accept his request as we once again put our lives on the line for some peasants in these slums. The pumping station is the first area to introduce us to the horrifying metalheads, the very same creatures that have threatened to overrun Haven City and destroy. Oh, so they die in 2 hits as well. Honestly, I wasn't expecting that. This mission is fairly straightforward with the same basic enemies we saw in Dead Town. It does introduce moving obstacles, but again, these are few and far between and never really pose too much of a problem. What I did find rather concerning though was just how well hidden some of the precursor orbs were. If you thought that plant deep-throating the orbs in the last game was a hard find, how about an orb hidden behind a tower in the middle of the ocean which I didn't even realize you could get to, and the moment you go into the water there's a sentry turret there waiting to blast your ass. Now that is a hard find. How the fuck are you even supposed to know this one's here? Finding the water pump valve was actually simple in comparison. On my way back to Torn, I stumbled across my very first side mission. Now I did say I was going to discuss the side missions separately, but I do want to draw attention to this one in particular, as it acted as the first real eye-opener for me. The 24 side missions in Jak 2 can be divided into 4 groups that essentially describe the tasks you need to complete. The mission in question here falls into the ring race category, which sees us zooming from ring to ring within a certain time limit. Now, in theory, this sounds easy enough, but then you realize you have to do this while avoiding Crimson Guards as well as other people on their zoomers. One of the biggest hurdles when it comes to driving vehicles in this game was understanding the hover zones. You essentially have 2 options when piloting a zoomer in Jak 2. You can either stay on the ground and risk hitting guards and other civilians, or you can hover above them and risk crashing into other zoomers instead. This system works incredibly well when you're flying around the city without a care in the world. Where it falls short, however, is when there's a time-gated mission that requires you to drive through specifically placed rings at both altitudes. This adds an element of luck, which as we'll come to see, was extremely detrimental to my mental health. Fuck off! Dude, fuck off! But alas, we're getting ahead of ourselves once again. This first ring race isn't nearly as bad as some of the latter ones. Now after meeting up with Torn once again, we return to the fortress where we're tasked with blowing up some ammunition. This mission actually starts off with one of the most notorious roadblocks for newer players, the tank segment. Personally, I had no problems with this particular segment, but I can see why some would struggle getting through it. The distorted camera lens as well as these strange angles really fucks with your depth perception and sense of scale. I'm not even sure how I managed to get through the turret section the first time through, but hey, I'll take it. The segments to follow weren't too challenging, as all it involved was some rather basic platforming. With the ammo destroyed, Torn tells us to make a delivery to the Hip Hog Saloon. What he doesn't tell us is that we'll be royally fucked by Crimson Guards along the way. Wait, what? So they just ram you while you're flying? One thing you have to understand here is that by this point in the game, I hadn't figured out that in these type of situations, it's far easier to drive along the ground and instead spent a good few minutes crashing into other zoomers. After pulling off what may have been the slowest delivery in history, I met up with the one called Crew, only to realize it was someone I knew very well. Hey, yo, what's my sister doing there? Despite our shitty delivery job, we're handed the Scattergun, which is the first of 4 guns we'll be unlocking throughout the game. This was probably the most shocking change of them all, as it fundamentally changes the combat system. Now, I wouldn't consider this change a negative one. In fact, I think the variety it adds can only be viewed as a net positive, especially when you consider the amount of creative liberty the developers would have had regarding new enemy types moving forward. What I was concerned about was the impact these guns would have on the game's difficulty. I assumed that giving players a ranged option would nullify any semblance of difficulty. Now, after having beat the game, I can confirm that I was completely wrong. In fact, this assumption was almost immediately obliterated by the very next task at the gun training course. In Jak 2, each gun has a custom training course assigned to it that involves shooting cardboard cutouts of enemies as fast as possible while also avoiding the civilians that pop up. Each gun course has 3 scores, which represent bronze, silver, and gold ranks. If your ego is as big as mine, you'll most likely attempt to get the gold rank straight up only to fail 6 times at achieving silver. No, you didn't mishear me. After 6 heartfelt attempts at this gun course, I hadn't even come close to scratching silver. It's actually unbelievable how small the margin of error is on some of these gun courses. Should you miss even a few targets or hit a single civilian, there's almost no shot of you getting that gold record. Humbling aside, our next task saw us protecting Sig as he hunted some new metalhead trophies. This mission kind of validated my initial concerns because it's just too easy with the scattergun. None of the enemies could even get close to you, and the AoE potential of this gun just obliterates a whole group of them all at once. And despite how strong the scattergun seems, it's by no means the strongest gun in the game. That title belongs to the Blaster, and luckily for me, it wouldn't be long before I got my hands on it. Now obviously, I wasn't stupid enough to attempt a gold record on the Blaster course without any upgrades, especially after that humbling I got earlier.
You're not that guy, pal, trust me.
2 seconds later.
Jesus, I might actually just be shit. Okay, you caught me. I lied. The blaster at its core is a single target weapon with significantly more range than the scattergun. You could very well beat the whole game with this one weapon if you so wished, and that's even without incorporating spin attacks, which turns it into a completely different beast. Now, despite how strong the blaster is, there are certain situations where it can't carry you. For example, zoom emissions. Bro, I thought it was a no hover zone. Why is everyone hovering? Wait, did that guy just say nothing to report after I crashed into someone and then stole someone else's vehicle? Nothing to report. With blaster in hand, we make our way over to the stadium where we hear a familiar voice.
Someone was looking for a race driver?
I'm busy right now. You must be Crew's new errand boy.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
The mysterious figure tells us that we need to win the jetboard challenge in order to earn a spot on our racing team. And if my first few attempts on this board were anything to go by, I don't think we're ever getting on this racing team. Having learned my lesson from the gun courses, I didn't attempt to get the ridiculous gold record this early on, and instead I made my way over to the strip mine in the hopes of rescuing someone named Vin. Now the strip mine introduces two new metalheads, the Stingers and the Metal Jackets. The Stingers are a complete joke, being one of the only enemies to not only die in one hit, but also to deal only 1 point of damage. The Metal Jackets, on the other hand, were far trickier as they presented a target which could only be dispatched with gunplay. Half the time these guys aren't even on the fucking screen, so you just have to hope and pray that the janky aim lock feature works, which honestly is a coin flip. After saving Vin, I made my way back to Crew, who wanted us to collect some money bags within a certain time limit. Now at this point in the game, I was absolutely dreading another Zoomer mission, but this one didn't actually turn out that bad. It was actually during this very mission where I realized how important it was to stay on the ground while being hunted. Being on the ground means we can avoid getting riled by these suicidal guards who do nothing except collide with you at light speeds.
Why?
Now, as frustrating as this is, the reward for completing this mission somewhat makes up for it. With gun upgrade in hand, we make our way over to Onin's hut. She then sends us off to the mountain temple to find 3 relics which are said to be the key to unlocking the Tomb of Ma. This temple branches out into 3 linear paths, each with their own unique set of challenges. One path has a jackal that's somehow warped from Halo, the other path had a puzzle that quickly exposed my lukewarm IQ, and the last saw us facing off against a rhino thing, which I had no idea how to kill. Thankfully, I had more chances to figure it out, because this guy apparently shows up in every path. How lovely. Towards the end of one particular path, we're faced with an avalanche of rocks, and to me, they seem to be continuously falling to the point where I really struggled to find a clear path through them. Even so, I managed to obtain all 3 relics just to accidentally activate one of the worst Zoomer-based side missions in the entire game. Oh my, you have to be fucking kidding. Did I get knocked into another Zoomer and oh my fucking god. This mission sees us delivering a package to the hideout in under 90 seconds, which is an extremely tight time frame. I'm talking thighs around your neck type tight. If you so much as crash or even miss a single turn, that pizza's going cold, and you're getting a 1-star review on Uber Eats. This is made even worse when you realize that you have to go through the highway section that's always packed with fucking vehicles. One thing I just couldn't understand is when you go to retry the mission, why is it that you don't start in the Zoomer itself? I mean, you waste 3 to 4 seconds every attempt just running to the Zoomer just to get on it. That is complete bullshit. I must have attempted this side mission 7 or so times before I finally lucked out on a run with minimal vehicles. I hope that package was fucking worth it. Now, I wasn't even halfway through the main story at this point, yet my death count had far surpassed my total death count in the Precursor Legacy. Thankfully, the following missions didn't pose too many problems whatsoever. Our showdown with Baron Praxis at the palace was also surprisingly easy, considering he's sort of the midway boss of the entire game. His attacks are also obviously telegraphed that it makes avoiding them extremely easy. Unfortunately, following his defeat, we're introduced to one of the most infuriating mission types known to man, escort missions. The first escort mission tasks us with shuttling underground fighters around Haven City. On its own, this would have been a rather relaxing mission, but of course it wouldn't be that simple. No, instead we have the Crimson Guard on our ass 24/7. And if that wasn't bad enough, apparently no one let the underground fighters know that I was their Uber pickup, because none of them wanted to get in the fucking vehicle. Dude, get in! What the fuck? Completing this mission rewards us with a new gun, which is extremely effective at stun locking large groups of enemies. I swear Naughty Dog must love escort missions or something, as not long after that first escort mission, we're told by Crew to go rescue some of his lurker friends. You know, the very same enemies that stood in our way throughout the first game. That being said, I'm not one to hold a grudge. So with a sigh, I accepted his task, only to regret it straight after once I realized how brain dead these lurkers were. Please get in the fucking vehicle, man. Why does it take so long? Now I'm not sure if you can tell, but I wasn't enjoying myself during these escort missions. Little did I know that it was only going to get worse from here. See, as thanks for rescuing his brain-dead friends, Bruta tells us about a seal piece that's apparently been found in the water slums. What he fails to mention, however, is the fact that this is a neat trap set up by the Crimson Guard. Now we have to fight our way through a never-ending stream of enemies, and when I say never-ending, I mean never fucking ending. These guys don't stop spawning. This leads to a mission where you're constantly being pressed from all directions, you've got no way to heal yourself, no way to rush past them, as each dropship comes equipped with a turret that will just fucking blast your ass, and the fact that all of these troops come equipped with their own guns means you can literally get hit from off screen without ever having a chance to retaliate. This was by far the most frustrating mission I had come across, which was reflected in the death count as I died over and over and over again. It got to the point where I started to question whether or not I had what it took to beat this game. In that moment, it all felt hopeless. It honestly reminded me of my high school days where I was hard stuck Bronze 4 in League of Legends for months. But you know what they say, when you've hit rock bottom, the only way to go is up. Yeah, never mind, that's a shit saying anyway. Joking aside, I did eventually make my way through the water slums using a combination of the Vulcan Fury and Blaster Gun. With the Infinity Stones in our hands, all that was left to do was to use them to activate the old light tower in No Man's Canyon. And just like that, the entrance to the Tomb of Ma was open. The Tomb of Ma requires us to complete 2 tests in order to proceed. The first test is rather simple and involves mainly platforming segments. In between these segments, however, we get to play as Daxter for a short while as we run away from a massive spider. Ironically enough, this section was the one I struggled with the most in the first test. See, Daxter's small frame meant that it was incredibly hard to notice his shadow when jumping from platform to platform. This meant that I missed quite a few jumps and died as a result. Now, the second test was definitely the harder of the two, but it wasn't necessarily the test itself that caused problems. The second test is broken up into a few separate rooms, each with their own puzzles and dangers, and if you die at any point, you will be sent back to the very first room. This lack of checkpoints means you'll be completing the same memory puzzle, you'll be riding across the same electrified water, and you'll be smacking the same beetles every single time. Thankfully though, the actual rooms and sections themselves aren't too bad, so I didn't have to suffer for too long here. Unfortunately, those failed attempts did cost me dearly, as I didn't manage to reach the Precursor Stone before Baron Praxis. This resulted in another showdown against him, and this time around, he's even easier than he was the first time. Wait, what? Yeah, I'm not even sure how that's possible. All you've got to do in this fight is kill his little minions who die in one shot anyway, and then you just wait around and bide your time before he drops some bombs which you use to kick back at him. There's very little here that can threaten Jak, especially when you can literally stand still to avoid his most lethal attack. Now despite us wiping the floor with the Baron once again, he manages to make his escape with the Precursor Orb in hand, and apparently we don't have the time to worry about that, as we need to make our way over to the fortress to rescue some of our allies. The layout of this mission is rather straightforward. We work our way through a few groups of Crimson Guards, we jump over these moving lasers, and then we get fucked by these turrets on the jetboard. Not to worry though, because... Oh, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Yeah, so apparently at this point in the game, Naughty Dog just said, you know what, fuck it. Let's not program in checkpoints for these later levels. The frustration to follow reached its peak down in the sewers where I was once again tasked with escorting a group of men. This time though, I have to make sure that they don't die, as metalheads swarm us from all angles. The worst part of it all are these metalheads that shoot lasers from off screen. This paired with the awkward camera angles makes these sections far harder, as you can barely see where the lasers start and stop. I died multiple times to these motherfuckers, and you already know where they're spawning us. Yep, right back at the fucking start again. After another attempt or two, I made it to what I assumed was the end. I mean, there's a whole ass cutscene here. Granted, it does show an army of metalheads descending towards us, and due to my low health, I did get clapped once again. But I held out hope. Surely, that cutscene would have acted as a checkpoint, right? No, of course it fucking didn't. That would make too much sense. Thankfully enough, I was able to complete it before my fist ended up through the monitor, but this one mission made me dread the missions to come. Our reward for this cancerous mission is the 4th and final weapon, which I don't believe I used at all, at least in this game. The next challenge took the form of a city race against Errol. This one was relatively hard, mainly due to the copious amounts of tight turns towards the end. Granted, all we're required to do this time around is beat Errol, which isn't actually that hard. See, the one silver lining in this mission is that Errol is just as shit as we are when it comes to racing this course, and after he sold at the very last minute, I snagged an easy victory. Now to my surprise, the missions to follow were all fairly easy. Buddha asked us to save a few more of his lurker friends, but considering I'd already done this before, I didn't seem to struggle at all the second time around. Certain missions have you piloting a mech, which do offer a small challenge, mainly because the mechs are very slow and they control like arse. Even so, none of these missions took more than a few attempts. Even the fight against Crew was a complete cakewalk. I didn't spend years of my life training zombies in COD just to fall victim to some slow ass green blobs. All of these actions culminated in a raid on the Metalhead nest. Our goal? The utter annihilation of the Metalhead leader, Core, or to give him his rightful name, Metal Core. Now, given the fact that this was clearly the last segment of the game, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect, but if I were to describe my feelings after having played it, I'd say it was underwhelming, at least from a difficulty standpoint. None of the metalheads here threatened me at all, as I was able to obliterate them all from range before they even got close. Before I knew it, I was face to face with the boss man himself. With my confidence at an all-time high, I stepped into the arena thinking I was about to absolutely rinse Core. I was then diddled and demolished within 30 seconds. That underwhelming feeling was almost immediately replaced with uneasiness as I died again and again to this guy. Now, don't get me wrong, I was getting my ass kicked here, but I was definitely making progress with each attempt. Do you guys remember when I said the blaster was the strongest weapon in the entire game? This fight alone demonstrates why that is. See, the toughest part of this fight is having to deal with all the other metalheads that spawn in while also avoiding Core's attacks at the same time. If you jump and spin while firing the blaster however, Jak will rapidly fire the blaster in a circle. This spin adds an AoE element where the blaster shoots off in multiple directions, hitting enemies all around you. The only downside to this ability is the amount of ammo it consumes, which would have been a problem had this arena not had respawnable crates that drop an infinite amount of ammo. The final phase of this fight sees Core chasing you down constantly. The strategy here is to wait for Core to do either his beam attack or his wave attack, and then get some quick shots off on him. This was the strategy that I used, and after a few more attempts, I was able to take down Core once and for all. With the world saved once again, the gang happy as can be, and our kiss with Kira interrupted for a second time in a row. There's only one thing left to do. Wait, how are we already past 100%? If you remember back to the start of this segment, I stated that to get 100% in this game, we needed to collect 286 precursor orbs. Yet it says here that we're already at 107% with just 122. Now, technically, I could just save myself the pain and depression and cut it off here, as we've already passed 100%, but I wouldn't want to deny you guys the right to see me suffer. See, Jak 2 actually goes all the way up to 124% once you've collected all 286 precursor orbs, the first of which are locked behind a certain jetboard challenge. The gold rank for this challenge requires a whopping 120k points. The more complex the tricks and the longer you string them together, the more points you ought to receive. Or at least that's what the game told me. I honestly had no idea what the fuck I was doing the first dozen attempts. I tried everything, and I mean everything, from grinding in between tricks to going onto the half pipe and doing flip after flip after flip. Nothing seemed to be working, and after 20 or so attempts, I was once again starting to doubt myself. But alas, in my darkest moments, I managed to rise up and concoct the ultimate strategy. Now ironically enough, this strategy pretty much entailed having no strategy at all. I would pretty much just spam the trick button and the jump button over and over again and switch between the directional flips once the points started to diminish. I didn't really have high hopes for this strategy. I mean, how could something so stupid work?
Congratulations.
Nope, I take it all back. I am a genius. Considering I got that close to the gold record on my first attempt at this dumb shit, I knew for a fact that I would nail it on my next attempt. And nail it I did, as I claimed my first gold record in Jak 2. From here, I made a quick pit stop at Onin's tent, the main reason being to replay her funky magic game where we need to press the controller buttons as they shoot out of this bowl. These type of games I find extremely easy. I've read online that some tend to struggle on this one, but I had no real problems reaching the 1000 mark for the gold record on my first attempt. The next challenge I took on was the one I had attempted way back at the start of the game, the intimidating gun courses. This time around though, I wasn't really that worried as I'd picked up a good few gun upgrades while playing through the main story. Upgrades like faster fire rate and more ammo capacity certainly made a difference, and while it did take me a few attempts, particularly on the scattergun course, I was able to claim a gold record with every gun. From here, I made my way over to the stadium to participate in some NYFE races. There are a total of 8 races, each with a bronze, silver and gold time. If I'm being honest, I thought I'd just waltz into the stadium and dominate these races on my first few tries.
2,000 years later.
Absolutely flawless gameplay if you ask me. In reality, it took me over 14 minutes to achieve a gold record on the first course. And just like everything else in this game, the margin of error they give you on some of these times is downright sadistic. If you make any mistakes whatsoever, these races will punish you. You can't miss a single boost. You have to hit the shortcut every single lap, and if you so much as scratch, and I mean scratch, like just tip a wall and spin out, there is zero chance you're getting that gold record time. You have to be absolutely perfect for 5 laps in a row. I cannot even begin to describe the amount of times I sold on the final lap after having had the perfect race. It was honestly heartbreaking. Oh, that screwed me, hasn't it? That screwed me. Now, I'm not going to describe each race in detail, but I will show you the number of attempts it took me to beat each race, as I think it puts into perspective just how difficult these races actually were. With that being said, all that was left to complete were the various side missions scattered around Haven City. Now, as I mentioned briefly before, these missions can be separated into one of 4 groups. The most common side mission is a simple orb hunt where you have to track down the precursor orb within a certain time limit. Now, I'd be lying if I said that some of these didn't give me some trouble, but for the most part I was able to find them on my first or second attempt. The 3 unique missions were also fairly easy to complete, as they mimicked missions that we had already completed during the main story. Where things started to get ridiculous, however, were the city race and the final ring race. These 2 missions are what I'd consider to be the hardest missions in the entire game. Harder than all the missing checkpoints, harder than the ambush in the water slums, and harder than every single stadium race. But what exactly is it about these particular missions that makes them so hard? Well, in terms of the final ring race, it purely comes down to RNG. Because we're zooming around Haven City, the likelihood of colliding with either guards or another zoomer is extremely high, especially when you have to be at a certain altitude to hit a ring within a given time limit. You're almost immediately screwed the moment you hit a crimson guard. Guess I'm just dead. And I don't even want to know the number of times I shifted altitude straight into another zoomer at the worst possible time. Bro, there's always someone there, man. This is honestly my biggest gripe with the entire game. Like, I really question whether or not anyone playtested these missions, because it doesn't seem like it. Now, this might be a hot take, but there really shouldn't be this much RNG involved in missions with time limits and time pressures. It's not fun, it's not rewarding, it's just downright infuriating. Alas, after another dozen attempts or so, the stars aligned for me and I was able to complete the final ring race. This leaves us with one final race, and interestingly, it follows the exact same route as the race against Errol during the main story. What makes this one hard though, is that it now has a bronze, silver and gold record time attached to it. The gold time requires a daunting sub 207, and once again, the game requires absolute perfection from the player. So you can't crash, you can't hit civilians because it slows you down, honestly you can't really do fucking anything apart from drive perfectly. I must have raced this course over 20 times, and while I got close a few times, oh my god, how many more times do I have to do this race, man? The sheer length of the course made being consistent a stressful yet required endeavor. I could honestly make a whole ass rage compilation with just this race alone. Fuck's sake! Oh, how did I miss that? Oh, dude, just piss off, man. Just piss off. What? No. No. Fuck that. No shot that just happened. But I did eventually race the perfect race, which secured me that final gold record. Finally, after all the blood, sweat, and blood I put into this game, I can proudly say that I have 100%ed Jak. Wait, how am I missing 2 orbs? So apparently the last 2 orbs I needed to get were located in the very first mission of the game. You know, the one where you literally have to escape the fortress. God, that's embarrassing. Either way, at the end of Jak 2, I died a total of 217 times, meaning that technically, it's around 9 times harder than its predecessor. And let's just say that I wasn't betting any money on Jak 3 when going into it. Jak 3 picks up where Jak 2 left off, but instead of being heralded as the hero who saved Haven City, Jak finds himself banished to the barren wastelands. It's nice to see that we're getting treated with the respect that we deserve. It's not like we just saved the city or anything. As we wander ever so slowly through the desert, we get hit with flashbacks that paint a rather grim scene. It seems that even without their leader, the Metalheads have once again began a raid on Haven City. And because of Jak's dark eco powers, the people suspect he is the main cause. Eventually Jak ends up passing out, only to wake in a mysterious throne room where he's greeted by Damus, the king of Spargus. Damus tells us to prove ourselves worthy, as we're immediately thrown into an arena that acts as the game's tutorial stage. Jak once again retains the exact same moveset from the previous games. Having completed the short obstacle course, we're given our scattergun back as we delve into our first combat scenario. Given that we're still in the tutorial phase of the game, the first encounter isn't difficult at all. The Marauders are all melee based, and while they do take 2 hits to defeat, most of them can't even get close enough to Jak before they are gunned down. That being said, this arena does keep you on your toes, as the lava momentarily rises every now and then. Thankfully my IQ matches Einstein's, and I was able to figure out the overly complex solution of jumping up on these obscure platforms. With victory secured, we earn our first war amulet, but more importantly, we get our blaster gun back. Now unlike Haven City, Spargus is a bit dated. This means there's no zoomers for us to ride, and instead we get to ride leaper lizards, which are arguably even more fun. Now, that doesn't mean I was good at riding these things. Oh dear, I just got juked the fuck out. I guess some things never change. With my ankles shattered, I sought the help of a particular monk. Unfortunately though, this monk didn't seem to have any healing powers and instead waffled on about the end of our planet. Thankfully, this weird satellite thing gives us the perfect excuse to escape this awkward conversation, and for the next few minutes I stumbled my way through this minigame. The first round is fairly easy, but trust me when I say, this won't be the last time we see it. I then spent some time exploring Spargus, and one of the first things I noticed were the numerous precursor orbs scattered around the city. By this point, you're most likely wondering what exactly do we need to achieve 100% in Jak 3. Now apart from completing the main story, all we need to do is collect all 600 precursor orbs. Because Jak 3 draws from the layout of Jak 2, these orbs are once again split into main story missions, side missions, vehicle missions, as well as certain minigames that once again have bronze, silver and gold ranks attached to them. I know it may sound like a daunting task, especially when you realize that Jak 2 only had 286 orbs to collect, but trust me when I say, size doesn't always matter. Am I right, ladies? Who am I kidding? This is a full-blown sausage fest. Speaking of vehicle missions, after meeting with Cleaver, we get to test out one of Jak 3's newest additions, the sand buggies. Our first partner is Tough Puppy, and don't let his name fool you, he's by far the worst vehicle in the entire game. Thankfully, its lack of firepower doesn't stop us from clapping Cleaver's cheeks in his own race. Now truthfully, I didn't succeed on my first attempt. Just like the zoomers in Jak 2, these buggies took a while to get used to, mainly due to the slippery physics that cause the buggy to slip and slide while turning. They're also surprisingly easy to flip, which I can't imagine was part of the design choices when building them. Either way, I eventually claimed victory, meaning I could take Tough Puppy out into the wastelands to collect some lost artifacts. It was at this point when I realized how doo-doo this buggy actually was. See, the wastelands aren't as barren as the rumors would have you believe. In fact, these wastelands may have been more crowded than Haven City, as you're constantly being battered and shot at by marauders. That being said, the sheer scale of the wastelands means you're less likely to crash and blow yourself up. The marauders also deal minuscule damage to the point where they aren't even a real threat. You can also destroy them fairly easily. Unfortunately, Tough Puppy has no offensive capabilities whatsoever, meaning all we can really do at this stage is juke the fuck out of them, which, to be honest, is a lot of fun. Holy fuck, yeah, I knew it. I'm actually a god at this game. After dominating these marauders, we return to the garage where Damus rewards us with our first piece of armor. This is another new addition to Jak 3, and as you'd expect, it increases our survivability. While Jak 3 uses the same HP system as Jak 2, the introduction of this armor means that we're no longer capped at 8 bars of life, with each piece adding an extra 2. The majority of the damage we will be taking in this game still accounts for 2 bars of HP, meaning each armor piece essentially allows us to take an extra hit, which is far more significant than you might think. Jealous of our new gear, we're challenged by Seam to a leaper race through the streets of Spargus. I was honestly baffled at how many races I was being thrown into, especially this early into the game. But I didn't mind it so much because unlike the Zoomer races in Haven City, there weren't nearly as many obstacles that we had to avoid. I did fuck up the first race because, I had no idea where I was going at certain points, but I quickly made up for it on my second attempt. Having mastered the movement of the leapers, I made my way back to the garage to have another crack at those sand buggies, and to my surprise, Cleaver begged us to take out a few metalhead beasts, telling us he'd happily give us a new vehicle in return. It was here where I first laid eyes on my one true love, the sand shark. This baby has it all. She's fast, has good offensive weapons, and also has decent handling. She does still slide all over the place, but I'm going to admit that that's most likely a skill issue. One thing I will say is that the lack of any aim functionality or aim lock makes shooting enemies while driving a pain in the ass. It wasn't too bad during this particular mission as the beasts have extremely large hitboxes, but in some of the later missions, this design flaw really shines through. With these metal beasts taken care of, it was time for our second bout at the arena. This time though, we're given our first weapon mod, which as we'll come to see, are some of the most overpowered additions to the whole franchise.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now. This is cancer.
The Wave Concussor gives the Scattergun an extremely strong AoE wave attack that can obliterate any enemies that try and get close. If that wasn't ridiculous enough, this gun doesn't stop charging even if you're hit during it. Using it, we breeze through the second arena challenge, earning us our second war medal, but more importantly, our second weapon mod, this time for the blaster. As if the blaster wasn't already good enough, this mod allowed its shots to ricochet off walls and other enemies, which made almost every combat encounter going forward a complete joke. After a quick detour to the wastelands, we find ourselves on the shoreline of Spargus, where Daxter exposes Jack's nighttime activities.
Don't worry, Jack beats things all the time. Hey, Jack?
Wait a minute.
We're then introduced to another minigame, this time taking the form of an arcade shooter where we need to shoot moving targets as they fly across the screen. This may be the easiest minigame so far, as there's a soft aim lock feature. Given the fact that it's used here, it makes me wonder why they never added it to the sand buggies, especially for certain missions. I understand that for certain targets it does have a small aim lock, but they seem to be rather specific rather than just everything having an aim lock, if you know what I mean. It's a gripe surrounding the consistency, I should say. Either way, with these Beyblades destroyed, it was time to prove ourselves worthy as we stepped into the arena one last time. Again, the arena challenge is a complete cakewalk. They do try to spice things up with these thin walkways surrounded by lava, but the long range of the blaster pretty much nullifies any potential danger posed by the marauders. The challenge ends in a shock twist as we come face to face with Sig. Having been one of our closest allies in Jak 2, we refuse to kill him off and instead are told to venture into a nearby metalhead nest to lay waste to the eggs situated there. To help with our mission, Cleaver actually lets us use a new sand buggy, the Gila Stomper. And as its name suggests, this thing just pretty much fucking stomps its way through the metalhead nest, which is honestly a bit disappointing. We then get to suit up in another vehicle, this time called the Dune Hopper. And as its name suggests, this guy has got some incredible legs on him, allowing him to jump to the moon and back. From here I made my way over to the Monk's Temple, which can only be reached by jumping across the many gaps in the Dune Hopper. After falling to my death in one of the most embarrassing moments yet, I made my way into the Monk's Temple. The layout of this temple is very reminiscent of the original Jak and Daxter game, as it involves plenty of platforming. I wouldn't really consider any of it particularly challenging though, as a lot of the elements are ones we've conquered throughout the franchise so far. Upon reaching the top of the tower, a peculiar glider awaits us. We then have to use this to reach the top of the volcano. Now this section mimics your typical ring races, as it requires us to fly through each one in order to keep our altitude. How do I know this? I learnt the hard way.
What's going on? Why are we nosediving? Ah, shit.
Despite its similarities to the ring races, there is a small difference that's unique to this mission. See, certain rings on the flight path start closed, requiring us to shoot them to open them up. This adds an extra layer of difficulty, as not only do we have to control the sporadic movements of the glider itself, but we also have to have decent aim. After a perfect landing, we make our way through the volcano as we're jumped by countless metalheads. Most of these metalheads present here are stingers or mantises, who both die in one hit to our blaster. While exploring the volcano, there are quite a few instances where we get to play as Daxter, and thankfully Daxter's moveset is almost identical to Jak's. He doesn't come equipped with a gun, but his kicks and punches seem to pack all the force required. Now despite saying that, I do believe playing as Daxter is far harder than playing as Jak, and this is mainly due to the field of view. Because Daxter is barely 2 foot tall, Naughty Dog had to zoom the camera in real close so we'd still be able to see him. The problem with this is that it cuts off a lot of our peripheral vision, which makes it harder to see what's going on on at times, or what's coming off screen. Eventually, we made our way to a platform where a petrified monk seems to be holding an artifact. We later learned that this is a dark idol, and after ripping it from the monk's cold dead hands, we're granted the dark invisibility power. Now, you're supposed to use this invisibility power to avoid the upcoming hurdles placed throughout the temple, but if you're like me, you'll try everything but the new invisibility power. After a collection of admittedly dumb deaths, we finally arrive at the Oracle's room. Having witnessed those embarrassing deaths, the Oracle felt the need to bestow upon us the strongest ability in the entire game, light regeneration. As the name suggests, this ability lets you stop time and regenerate your HP.
What did he say?
Yep, you heard me right. You can fucking stop time and heal yourself. What? Regenerating HP is one thing, but stopping time is ridiculous. I honestly had to do a double back when I first received this power, because I just couldn't believe how OP it sounded. With power in hand, we drive over to the shittiest oasis known to man, where we meet with Ashlyn. She tells us about the dire situation in Haven City, but before she can finish, we're ambushed by an army of marauders. Now, this one could have actually been a decently challenging mission, had I not just received access to one of the strongest abilities in the game. I honestly felt like I had become invincible at this point. I mean, you'd have to be a pretty dogshit player to die at this point. Now, as if we didn't just drive halfway across the wasteland to get to this oasis, we now have to drive all the way back to the monk temple to complete some new tests. The test in question involves riding around on our jetboard while we collect some floating yin and yang pieces. The game might refer to this as a test, but really it's just a tutorial segment for the jetboard, as there's no real dangers to speak of. Having aced this test on my first attempt, the Oracle bestows upon us the ability to slow time. Now, unlike light regeneration which stops time, flash freeze can be used to slow obstacles, allowing us to pass over them with ease. As I was saying, using this ability we can slow down time, allowing us to cross over moving platforms easily. Eventually we come across a lift that takes us down into the precursor subrails. Waiting for us is a Catacombs rail rider, which is pretty much just another zoomer. Whatever it is, it's our only means of reaching Haven City. And despite my wishes for a peaceful trip, these subrails come equipped with a fuck ton of defensive systems. Thankfully, the rail rider comes equipped with its own weapons that I didn't stop spamming the whole way through. Call it cheesing the game, call it laziness, it worked wonders. And before I knew it, I was in Haven City. Wait, this doesn't look like Haven City.
No shit.
And that's because it's not. Instead, we find ourselves in some lame ass eco mine. None of the enemies here stand up to our ricocheting plaster shots, and before long, we come across a bomb train. Along the way, we also picked up our second piece of armor, which only adds to our survivability. This next section offered a decent challenge, as we have to escort the bomb train along the tracks. Problem is, half of these tracks are raised, requiring us to shoot the red lights below them to drop them. This adds an element of pressure as we need to keep the train going while fighting off enemies and grinding across rails on the jetboard. At the end of this path, we come across the same rat bastard who banished us at the start of the game. Vega goes on to activate one of the ancient precursor robots in hopes of killing us before making his getaway. Little does he know that we've accrued so many powerful abilities that there's no chance that I'm dying to this pile of junk. Okay, that was a practice run. In all seriousness though, I had no idea what I was doing my first attempt. I wasn't even sure if I was supposed to be shooting these minecarts, but the moment I saw one fall, I finally understood the task, and you know me, I always deliver on my second attempt.
Stop the cap.
With the precursor robot destroyed and our third gun mod unlocked, it was high time we made our way over to Haven City. With the end of the world in sight, I thought this would be a great time to explore. And by explore I meant collect precursor orbs. I eventually walked my way over to this barrier where Samos and a cardboard cutout of Kira awaited. Samos mentions that we can reach the port district through the sewers, and Kira doesn't say shit. I told you this was a cardboard cutout. At this point in the game, there wasn't a single combat encounter that could threaten me. Whether it was incinerating a whole room of enemies with the wave concussor or nailing a group of metalheads with the beam reflector, there was little to no challenge with any of the sewer areas. With the sewers cleared out, we're finally able to take the lift back up to Haven City, and boy oh boy, does this place bring back memories.
Oh, dude, I fucking want to die.
The first thing I did when entering Haven City was orb hunt. Don't forget, we need to collect 600 of these bad boys to 100% the game. Now I did say I was orb hunting, but after a good 20 minutes or so, I couldn't find more than a single one. And there was a very good reason for that. See, the orbs placed here aren't in your usual hiding spots. No. Naughty Dog decided to hide them at the top of these towers, which you have to climb yourself. What? I didn't realize this was Assassin's Creed. Oh, and you also have to grind across these rails on your jetboard. You know my favorite part of all of this though? It's that when you fall off these rails, you have to climb the whole ass tower again. Ignoring the blatant skill issue, I made my way over to the Naughty Otzel, where I reunited with our old friend Torn. He warns us of a few KG bots that are stalking the district and asks if we can destroy them. Now, I'm not sure what I was smoking here, because I didn't even realize what was going on, and then all of a sudden, the mission ends with Daxter riding a missile. And fuck me, this shit was hard. I have no idea how I ended up as Daxter who rides a missile like a bull, but I'd imagine a bull would be easy to control. Assuming we ignore the mystery of how Daxter's even managing to turn the missile, I can't be the only one who struggled with this mission. The zoomed POV strikes once again, and the sharp turn angles on this bad boy often resulted in me running straight into a wall. Thank fuck there's a checkpoint halfway through this mission, because there was only so much missile riding I could handle. All this missile riding proved useful however, as we're able to blow up the barrier to the industrial section with it. That being said, I didn't immediately head on into the industrial section and instead found myself at a familiar facility. Now, just like in Jak 2, Jak 3 has a few gun training courses that we can complete. Unlike Jak 2 though, this game only has 2 courses, and rather than testing the base guns again, they're built to test the mods. With how overtuned these gun mods are, earning a gold score didn't take nearly as long, and after a few attempts I had earned a gold score in both courses. With another hurdle completed, I finally made my way into the industrial section. This area is filled to the brim with industrial robots, which admittedly could have proven pretty difficult. That is if you couldn't just fly over them in the zoomer. The missions to follow all went down the same. I'd walk into a room, shoot a few blaster shots, wait for everything to die, and then continue on. It didn't matter if I was in the sewers, the city, or even the monk's temple. This one gun mod laid waste to everything. These overpowered gun mods, paired with abilities like light regeneration, made Jak 3 feel far more tranquil than its grittier prequel. So now you're probably wondering, well, if the combat's easy, then what else is there that could possibly make this game difficult? And to that, I have one thing to say. Pac-Man. I present to you the hardest challenge in the entire game, and trust me, this shit is way harder than it looks. The game plays almost identically to Pac-Man, except instead of multiple ghosts, we're hunted down by a single enemy who moves from lane to lane in hopes of catching you. The only way to win in this game, just like in Pac-Man, is to eat every dot in this maze. After a while, a yellow pin will spawn and start restoring dots that you've eaten, and the only way to get rid of this thing is to eat it yourself, which can be fairly challenging if it's traveling in the same direction as Daxter is. The base version of this minigame isn't too hard to beat, as you only need to complete one singular round. The true horror, however, lies in the fact that it has a bronze, silver, and gold rank attached to it, and this gold rank requires you to beat the game 4 times in a row without dying. Oh, and did I mention that the 4th round has 2 enemies hunting you instead of 1? This shit was fucking brutal, and I died over and over and over again. I must have died over 20 times before I accidentally held down the X button, which actually causes Daxter to move faster. By this point, I had gotten pretty good at juking the nasties, and with this added speed boost, I was able to earn a gold rank on my 23rd attempt. This minigame was on par with some of the hardest challenges in Jak 2, which was a shock to me considering how easy the rest of Jak 3 had been so far. In comparison, the following missions were like I was playing on easy mode. The jetboard challenge was a cakewalk as it required an even lower score than in Jak 2. We've already gone over how easy combat encounters are at this point, and even though I struggled from time to time with a few of the driving segments, none of these really took more than a few attempts to complete. Even the first boss fight against Cyber Errol was easy. Any boss fight that includes minions becomes an automatic win in this game, purely because they allow for an infinite supply of ammo without posing any real threat themselves. I acknowledge that there are some tricky elements to this fight, namely the fact that with each phase, Errol causes more platforms to drop, giving you less space to move around in. But I mean, come on, you're going to need to do more than that to stop us. Realizing he doesn't stand a chance, Errol bolts as we make our way into Haven Forest. Here we come across the Astro Viewer, which we use to teleport to the dark ship, somehow. Honestly, this story doesn't really make that much sense sometimes. Regardless, we step into a mech once again and fight our way through waves of enemies. Along the way, we're tasked with smacking some bombs into these pulsing barriers, which is never too hard. At least until the very end, where you have to specifically time your hits while avoiding a laser. Doing so breaks down the shield on the dark ship, leaving it susceptible to the planetary defense system. And after this fever dream, we make our way back to Haven City, where we are immediately responsible for Torn's safety as he drives a cargo ship filled with explosives towards the tower door. After destroying it, we get to work clearing out the metalhead tower, which ironically has no metalheads at all. Just for the sake of comparison, if this exact mission was in Jak 2, it'd be one of the hardest missions in the entire game. The sheer number of enemies that swarm you here is quite ridiculous. Yet because of all the abilities and weapon mods we have, it's actually somewhat easy. I mean, we literally come equipped with a nuke at this point that just obliterates everything on screen. What the fuck just happened? Now, despite me dropping nukes left, right, and center, we somehow make our way to the top of the tower without it collapsing. Here we find Errol, who tells us that he's made contact with the Dark Maker ship. With no time to spare, we dive out of the tower, which is only now experiencing the force of our nukes, and zoomed on over to the ruined stadium. Unfortunately, there's no time to reminisce about the races we did here, as this place is now crawling with metalheads. Luckily for us, none of these variants can stand up to our supercharged guns, and before long we find ourselves being saved by Damus. Realizing that Damus doesn't have a driver's license, we take the wheel as we ram through multiple generators. There's just something about driving around in a slamdozer with a friend as you fight off strange creatures that really helps form that familial bond.
2 seconds later.
No, Damus, he's dead. And would you look at that? He was our father all along. I told you there was some kind of bond there. Before we were even allowed to process that shocking twist, we're hit with another one as we learn that the almighty precursors were Otzels all along.
Oh my god.
Now, as powerful as these little guys are, the defense system needs some time to gather the required energy to destroy the Dark Maker ship. And unfortunately, time is the one thing we don't have, as Errol looks to awaken the ship's ultimate weapon. As a result, we're teleported up onto the ship where we have to fight through countless Dark Makers who are easy enough to deal with. I did die once while platforming through this area due to some pretty dumb mistakes, but I did eventually make it to the end in time to tackle Errol off. Oh, so that was pointless. And would you look at that, he's also activated the cargo, causing it to drop towards our home planet. On the bright side, the defense system finally shoots the Dark Maker ship out of orbit. There's just one problem. We're still on the fucking ship. With the ship in shambles, it's up to us to avoid all the falling debris as we jetboard towards the exit. Well, I guess the world's fucked. After another death or two, I finally made my way to the warp gate, which sends us back to our planet. With the fate of the world in our hands, we steel ourselves as we prepare to face off against the worst boss in the entire franchise. I can't stress enough how anti-fun this first phase is. As if slipping and flipping your way around the wastelands wasn't aids enough. The fact that you can't aim your turrets makes hitting certain nodes extremely frustrating. The sheer scale of this boss demands your attention as you'll spend most of your time just trying to keep up. All the while, you're constantly being railed by bombs or getting stomped on, which can result in an instant kill.
This is fucking bullshit.
I must have died about 8 times to this guy before realizing I could just race ahead of him and do a quick spin to nail the last node on his front leg. His second phase in comparison is a complete joke. All of his attacks are extremely slow and you're essentially given an infinite supply of ammo once again from all his little minions. Each phase also ends with both a dark and light eco vent for whatever reason, meaning any damage you took during that phase can instantly be healed using light restoration. Why did they add this? For a world-threatening entity, he sure does give us a lot of resources to beat him. Safe to say, I was able to defeat him on my first attempt. As the gang celebrates their victory, Jak manages to pull off one of the biggest pump fakes in gaming history, as he's offered by the precursors to join them in an adventure to see the universe. Agreeing, he says goodbye to the gang before leaving. It's a bittersweet ending to the trilogy, or it would have been if he actually went through with it. Of course, Jak would never leave Daxter. They're a dynamic duo for a reason, and with that, we have 100%ed Jak 3, or at least that's what the game would have us believe.
So that was a fucking lie.
I know that you know that we need to collect 600 precursor orbs, and just like in Jak 2, they're spread across multiple activities. The majority of them are rewarded to us before completing side missions, but there are also a few minigames with scores that we have to reach. The hardest of these was without a doubt the satellite game. This game sees us pressing the respective buttons as they pass over these moving rings. I'd argue that this game is harder than Onin's game. as you have to time your button presses depending on the movements of these spiked rings. In Onin's game, however, you could just press the buttons as they appeared without having to worry about timing at all. I honestly struggled on the satellite game, or at least I did until I got past the first 300 points. I'm not sure why, but I found this game got easier the further in you got, as the buttons moved faster, making it easier to chain together multiple icons at once, which awarded more points. The other minigame I had to complete was piloting the turret on Sparkus's shoreline, and like I said earlier, this is probably the easiest minigame in the entire trilogy. The turret has aim lock, and again you can rack up a lot of points quickly by chaining them together. As was the case in Jak 2, the side missions in Jak 3 can be split into multiple categories. The orb searches return, as do the race and unique type missions. Now, despite there being 56 side missions to Jak 2's 24, I hardly struggled with these ones at all. A few of the orb searches took a few attempts, but surprisingly I didn't find any of the ring races or spirit races difficult at all. I can only assume that the decreased density of other civilians and zoomers made flying through each ring significantly easier, because I completed most of them on my first attempt. This meant that there were one set of challenges left, and these were by far the hardest in the entire game. The missions in question are assigned to us by Cleaver, and they involve using the buggies to complete some rather peculiar feats. I'm talking things like total airtime or completing a certain amount of rolls in a particular set of buggies. The majority of these challenges took me a few attempts to achieve the gold reward, but there were two in particular that took me well over a dozen tries. The first of these has us competing in a race that spans across the whole wasteland. What makes this mission particularly hard is the margin of error you're given. Just like the races in Jak 2, this one requires absolute perfection. If your buggy flips even once, you're most likely screwed. Even if it skids off course or hits a wall slightly, there's a good chance you're out of the running for that gold score. The race itself takes over 4 minutes to complete, meaning you have to be perfect for quite a long time. There were countless attempts where again, I would come into the final lap on pace, just to skid around a simple turn and flip at the worst time possible. It's hard to describe just how demoralizing this is when it happens again and again.
No, no, it's over. Fuck, dude.
After a dozen or so attempts, I was just exhausted from driving. That being said, I had actually gotten pretty good at driving the Sand Shark here. I could correct the vehicle if it ever started to skid, and I figured out how to nail this jump every time without flipping. And finally, after 16 or so attempts, I was able to claim gold as I passed the finish line with barely 4 seconds to spare. Now I know how ironic this will sound, but the final challenge I was stuck on was completing 9 rolls in a buggy within a minute. I had just spent over an hour doing a race where I was rolling every second attempt. Yet here I am, trying my hardest to tumble, just for my buggy to all of a sudden have an incredible center of gravity. I don't think this one took me quite as many attempts as the Wasteland race, but it was certainly frustrating and partly humorous that when I needed to, I just couldn't get these fucking buggies to flip. I did eventually roll my way to the gold record in this challenge. I then finished up a few more orb searches in Haven City, which brought me all the way to 600 out of 600 precursor orbs. Something I failed to mention earlier is the fact that you can actually use these orbs to purchase upgrades for your weapons and vehicles. And the reason I didn't bring this up earlier is because I personally had no idea you could do this until I had collected about 500 or so orbs, meaning my original playthrough could have been even easier. Regardless, at the end of Jak 3, I died a total of 86 times. Now that may sound like a lot of deaths, especially when compared to the first game in the trilogy, but you have to remember, most of these deaths can be attributed to like 3 or 4 challenges. That being said, I think it's time we ranked each game from easiest to hardest. To no one's surprise, I'm sure, Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy ended as the easiest game in the trilogy. The fact that the main story is centered around the collectibles that are required for 100% means that it doesn't offer nearly as much side content as Jak 2 or Jak 3. This paired with its simple combat system and straightforward platforming made for a relatively simple game, all things considered. I still think its difficulty progression is the best out of the trilogy, but its peak is nowhere near as bad as the other 2 games. Speaking of which, Jak 3 takes the middle spot. Now, in my opinion, I wouldn't say the story missions in this game were significantly harder than the ones in the Precursor Legacy. That being said, the game is much longer with far more side content to complete. Side missions like the Pac-Man minigame as well as the Wasteland race essentially carried Jak 3 to this spot. This leaves us with Jak 2 as the most difficult game to 100%. From the non-existent checkpoints to the ruthless zoomer races, Jak 2 felt like a torture chamber at times. Difficulty progression is almost non-existent in this game, yet it was also the most fun I had, albeit there were parts of Jak 3 that I did enjoy more. The game might have some frustrating lows, yet its highs are some of the best in PlayStation history. And with that bold statement, I bid you all adieu. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please do drop a like. Granted, if you hated the video, then feel free to dislike it as well. If you're clinically insane, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.